Hello, I'm Howard Friedman. I'm the director of the Jewish Community Library in San Francisco, and I'm so glad to welcome all of you. I want to thank our co-presenters at the JFCS Holocaust Center, and I want to thank the Friends of the Jewish Community Library who make everything we do possible, particularly now that the library is independent. I hope you'll consider becoming a friend by giving at any level at friendsofthejcl.org. And today's program is made possible in part by Larry Bergheimer. Please note that automated closed captioning for today's program can be turned on or off by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. We are very happy to have Ben Wood with us. Ben is a public video artist with a Master's of Science in Visual Studies from MIT. Based in San Francisco, he has a particular interest in the hidden and ignored histories that lie dormant within buildings in our community. He has created more than 20 projected video installations onto buildings and monuments. His large-scale displays have been seen locally on Coit Tower, the Haas Lilienthal House, Congregation Emmanuel in St. Ignatius Church, and internationally at the Museo Nacional de Arte in Mexico City and the London Jewish Museum. Ben, we're so happy to have you with us. It is now all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Howard. I'm delighted to be here. It's always so funny hearing those intros, and you did a great one. Thank you. First, I would like to take a moment to remember victims of the Holocaust. And if you're comfortable, those of you here, please share names in the chat of family members who you are remembering. And also, if you don't know their names, you can also say, I'm remembering my family members. Howard, I can't see the chat, so let me know if people are actually putting it in. Okay, so I am so honored to be here, to get to be here to share the powerful journey that I took last year with my mother and my brothers. I'm also so honored and touched to be in the presence of so many relatives of my family who were impacted and dispersed by the Holocaust. On this call, I have my own immediate family. And I have descendants of the Reisner family in the United Kingdom, descendants of the Philipsborn who survived in Berlin during the war and fled to Israel during its founding. And also Jacob Wagner, a family member who we connected with only recently, who lives in Israel, whose grandmother, Lena Wagner Tauber, was an important Zionist and a contributor to the fledgling country before its founding. I'm also very grateful to the Jewish Community Library and to see so many familiar faces. Last March, over the course of very busy and powerful 2 days in Berlin and the surrounding area, we were able to lay Stolpersteine for members of our family who were victims of the Holocaust. I'm going to share here the steps of our journey, as well as some of my own artistic and creative responses to their stories. As Howard mentioned, I'm a public video artist living here in San Francisco, often projecting stories onto buildings of those in our communities over the course of the past 20 years. Mostly here in San Francisco, I have created over 20 site-specific video artworks projected onto buildings like Coit Tower, the Cliff House, the Haas Lilienthal House, and most recently at Fort Point, which I explore people and place. Here you can see some still photographs from projections that I did at the Haas Lilienthal House and at Coit Tower. And you can see some more of my work, many projects on my website. And this project, the Stolpersteine journey, was the first opportunity where I've had to explore my own family history. Stolpersteine, translated as stumbling blocks, a project of the artist Gunter Demnig. He's almost like a saint these days, I think, he remembers victims of National Socialism by installing commemorative brass plaques into the pavement in front of their last address of choice. At this point, well over 100,000 have been placed throughout Europe. And Gunter Demnig cites the Talmud in saying that a person is only forgotten when his or her name is forgotten. The Stolpersteine sit in front of buildings and they bring back to life the memory of those people who once lived there. And every stone begins with something like, here lived. For our family and for many families who were impacted by the Holocaust, Stolpersteine are a very, very special way to commemorate our grandparents and our great-grandparents who, as victims of the Holocaust, had no resting place. And as present-day descendants, it creates a space where we can actively go to remember them. This journey came about all because of an email that I received in 2021 or 2022, I can't remember at this point, but from one Sabina Frank, a school teacher who was doing a Stolperstein project to commemorate the family of Moritz Reisner, my grandfather's cousin who had fled to San Francisco via Shanghai on the Trans-Siberian Railroad in August 1939. Moritz eventually settled here in San Francisco, where I'm sitting, in the Richmond district with his daughter. And I received that email from Sabina asking for a connection with Moritz's descendants. Later that year, Sabina had the Stolperstein installed, and I thought, well, this is a great opportunity here to practice my long dormant German, A-level German in England, and that maybe Sabina can help us finally understand, number one, what happened to our great-grandparents, to my great-grandparents, and also perhaps get Stolperstein for them too. Here's a picture of Gunter Demnig introducing, actually, here's a picture of Sabina. You can see Sabina right there, introducing the new Stolperstein as Gunter Demnig, the saint, installs them in Herzfeld. And here's a video of Michael Schimmel. Michael Schimmel is the town historian, and he's been a long-time supporter of making awareness around Jewish history in Zelo, in the town of our grandfather. In fact, he got to know our grandfather's cousin, Achim, and recorded his story. Here's a video of us going through the town as we enter the town Zelo in last March.
Das müsste eigentlich, das ist Familie Reisner hier, das hier geradezu. Das hier. Hier, seht ihr das hier? Ja. So. Und euer Haus, wo das war, das ist jetzt, wo die Dame ist hier, wo der rot-weiße, vielleicht haben sie schon, da haben sie wahrscheinlich den Stein schon.
So he's saying, and your house, your family's house is right there. And he's giving us a tour of the town in his car, and he's pointing out different landmarks. He just pointed out the house of the Reisner family, and he's pointing out right now the house of the Imlich family. And then he brings us over to the backside of my grandfather's, where my grandfather lived. This is like the old historic part of the town. We're all talking about it and getting excited because this is the first time that I had been there. My brothers and my mother had been there. He's pointing now at the house, the backside of the house, which is an empty lot. So Zelo is a small town of about 5,000 people, about 2 hours east of Berlin. My grandfather, Henry Phillips, also previously known as Heinz Philipsborn, and his parents had lived in the town, along with their Reisner cousins, and were one of the few remaining Jewish families in Zelo in the 1930s. The Jewish community had began in the early 1800s and grown to a community of about 60 people by the 1880s. But by the 1920s, many families had left for larger cities. The Reisner family had lived in Zelo since the 1870s and were all involved in the family business as furriers, in which they would gather, prepare, and sell fur. By the 1930s, the extended Reisner family were the remaining Jews in the town, and they all lived on Berliner Straße. And you'll see here, these are the properties which we just did a little tour through the town. This is the Reisner house. This is the Philipsborn house. And this is the Ermlich house. And this is where the synagogue once stood before it was destroyed, before it was demolished. So these are all connected families. They're all part of the Reisner family. They're all connected. They're all siblings, and they all had children. And those were the sites. So here's the Reisner family. Actually, this Stolpersteine journey originally began in 2011 in Zelo with the laying of Adelheid. That's my great-grandmother, Stolpersteine, along with other members of her family, her Reisner family, the members of the family who all had perished. Here you can see the Reisner family, members of, from left to right. That's Willi Reisner, Ruth, Louis, Achim, and Martha. I think that's perhaps Achim's bar mitzvah. And here are some pictures of the Stolpersteine that were laid in front of their house in 2011. This is very exciting for me to show this photograph. It's one that we've only recently identified with the help of a wonderful handwriting decipherer, which is very complicated in German. This is the Ermlich family. The parents Isidore and Julie, with daughter Hildegard or Hilda and her husband Karl-Heinz, probably taken at their wedding. And then these are Stolpersteine, also placed in 2011. And now every year on the anniversary of Kristallnacht, the Stolpersteine are cleaned by children, by students. Here also some new photographs which we hadn't seen before until recently of my family, of my grandfather's parents, the Philipsborn family. You'll see on the left, that's Max and Adelheid Philipsborn, probably in their back garden. And on the right, I'm quite certain, although my brother Brian and I disagree about this, but I'm quite certain that this is Adelheid with my grandfather in about 1920 when he was born. So in 2011, a Stolpersteine had been laid for Adelheid, but not for Max. And so we've not, of course, I've long known about Max. Max is my middle name. So I've always known I was named after him. So my trip brother Brian had tasked me with this mission of finally getting a Stolpersteine for Max, and that's where Sabina came in and helped, because it wasn't an necessarily easy task. He had died in 1940, and because of that, he hadn't previously been considered a victim. He died apparently of natural causes. But we've always known that Max was a victim and that he also should get a Stolpersteine next to his wife and be remembered. So in the midst of all this process of getting Stolpersteine, you have to get documentation in order to, well, figure out what happened to them. We found this document through the family. It's called a Eidstattliche Erklärung. In 1938, Max and his brother Louis Reisner were both arrested on Kristallnacht and sent to Sachsenhausen, which was a concentration camp outside of Berlin, where they were made to do hard labor. And they were both released after a month because they fought in World War I. This is from 1963, this document, and a neighbor of Max testified that she'd known Max for many years, and that sometime between 1938 and his death, he'd been involved in an accident that was caused by the Nazis, which caused his death. It's not clear what happened to him, but this kind of documentation, plus the fact that he had been arrested and imprisoned and abused at Sachsenhausen, meant that we were able to get a Stolpersteine for him finally, with the help of Sabina. And so it says, this document states that during fascism, Mr. Philipsborn had an accident which was caused by the Nazis, following which he died and was later buried in the Jewish cemetery on Hinterstrasse. So on last year, on March 11th, on his birthday, 84 years after his passing, we laid a Stolpersteine for Max in front of the side of his house at 46 Berliner Straße. And this is my mother, their granddaughter, who had never met her. She never knew her grandparents, grew up without any grandparents or extended family. This is her placing the Stolperstein next to, symbolically placing it next to Adelheid, his wife. Show a picture, yeah. And the town, in this case, later did the work to physically install it. We were there sort of as a, oh, they're going sideways, as a symbolic gesture. There were about 60 people there. So in the presence of the mayor of the town council members, and about 60 residents of Zelo, my mother laid a Stolperstein next for her grandfather, next to his wife. Brian, my brother, said the El Mole Rachamim prayer, which is the memorial prayer for souls, to the departed souls, and made his speech. That's actually not me. For those of you who don't know, I have an identical brother. I'm a triplet. That is my brother, Brian. He is a rabbi, and he was very helpful because he's very good at German and also good at giving speeches. He's standing there with the mayor and some members of the school. And then there they are together. Recently, I got this photograph of it finally placed. And then I wanted to just show a picture of some of those that were able to escape. In April 1939, my grandfather Heinz fled to England with his cousin Willie Reisner, who's in the middle. My grandfather's on the left. And later that year, three days before the start of the war, Achim, who was on the right, fled with 111 boys from the Ort Technical School in Berlin to England. Willie and Heinz both entered what was called the Kitchener Camp, and they joined the Pioneer Corps, which was a corps of men that were mostly made up of refugees. And they went to France and Germany to fight against the Nazis. And Achim continued his school in Leeds. I'm going to talk a little bit about this other, as well as Stolperstein, other projects that I've been doing in relation to this. This is a very interesting site. As I mentioned, my great-grandfather Max had been buried in 1940 in the cemetery. This is the cemetery. So following the laying of Stolperstein for Max, we visited the site of the Jewish cemetery, which is down the street in Zelo, where Max was buried along with 100 other of our Jewish ancestors, who for the past 65 years have been buried below a car park. This was a Jewish cemetery from 1800 until it was desecrated by the Nazis and destroyed during World War II. Zelo itself was the site of one of the last major battle of World War II, as the defense of Berlin was occurring. During the DDR, after the war, the cemetery was paved over as a car park, which has remained for 65 years. And over the past year, I've been recovering the history of the cemetery and the names of over 100 people who were buried there. And I'm an artist in the form of a guerrilla art, let's say. I made this banner when I went there, and I said, I'm going to place this on the cemetery so people will know that this is actually a cemetery. It's not a former cemetery. It's still a cemetery because people are still buried there. I placed a banner with their names on the front gate of the no longer used car park to reclaim this as a space of memory for the former Jews and Jewish residents of Zelo. And during a ceremony with the local high school students, I presented their names to the town. And this was a project that I worked very closely with the town archivist on Ellen Buchwald, who answered all of my questions anytime I emailed. Was just so helpful and excited and delighted to be supportive in this endeavor. Recently, with the support of Dr. Anke Geisler-Grunberg, who's on this call, we have finally been able to write a history of the cemetery, which is now displayed at the Brandenburg Jewish Cemeteries Project, which is at the University of Potsdam. I'm going to give that link at the end of the call. It's in German though, so you might have to get it translated. Based on the register from 1800 to 1876, and with the help of the archivist, as I mentioned, Ellen Buchwald, I was able to recreate this list of the most likely burials from 1800 until 1940. In 1940, our great-grandfather was carried by hand to the cemetery and is probably the last burial that happened in the cemetery. And I've created this very ambitious visual proposal to restore. This is a Jewish memory park. Here's a design that I made, hoping to encourage the town council finally to restore this as a park of memory. And here's a video that I made. Hopefully you can see that. My family's ancestors were buried in a Jewish cemetery in Zelo, Germany from 1800 until 1940. During the Nazi period, the cemetery was desecrated and destroyed, and following the war it was paved over as a parking lot, which it has remained for over 60 years. I am recovering the history of the cemetery and the names of over 100 souls who were buried there. I propose to work with the town to return the paved over land as a memorial park and creating a present-day space of reflection that honors my family's buried ancestors and victims of the Holocaust. I propose 3 focal areas of reflection. I'm going to stop there. So I would just say that I've been very grateful for the reception of the town, of the mayor, the new mayor, Robert Nitz, a very dynamic young mayor who's trying to introduce and do some great things for the town. So I'm excited to continue to work with them and hopefully see that realized. The town is currently in the process of trying to raise money for it. On the Monday afternoon, after we laid Stolpersteine for Max Philipsborn, we drove to Strasbourg, a town that's located 19 miles from Berlin. This was the first time since 1939 that anyone from our family had set foot back in Strasbourg, a town where our grandmother's family had lived for generations. Our grandmother's stepmother and grandparents and their family had lived in Strasbourg since the 1880s. There's a picture of me talking. There was a really wonderful group that helped support. Of course, this was also helped. Sabine was involved every step of the way, every single Stolperstein, but there were various community groups that supported us too. And in the case of this Stolperstein, the town, we were laying a Stolperstein for Helen Levy. The Levy family, including father Albert, son George, and daughter Franziska, also already had Stolperstein laid for them, with the exception of Helena, who also, like Max, had died in 1940 and had not been considered a victim because she had presumably died of natural causes. The town had incorrectly laid the Stolperstein on the wrong side of the street. And with the help of a local town historian, we figured that out. But also an incredible story, which I'll share in a moment, of someone else who knew that it was on the wrong side of the street. Here's a picture of Brian, again, making some remarks in front of an attendance of about 40 people. Here's a picture of the Levy family, who were clothing and textile sellers, auctioneers, and they lived in the town since 1886. I wanted to, this is Albert, this is David Schumacher, this is my grandmother, and this is probably Franziska Schumacher. We don't know who these people are. There was an extraordinary thing that occurred when we were there after we unveiled the Stolperstein for Helena. An elderly and yet physically fit man approached me and introduced himself. 85 years since their forced removal and destruction of their home, He may well be the last living person with memories of the Levy family. His name is Kurt Schornsheim. He's a 100-year-old and a lifelong resident of Strasbourg. He's still physically active. He rides a bicycle, and he has an incredible memory. Of course, I wanted to seize any opportunity that I could to interview him and ask what he could remember of the Levy family. And as I said, there was a person mentioning that the Stolpersteine had originally been placed on the wrong side of the street. Well, it was him. He was probably the only person that remembered that as a 100-year-old. So I'm going to play a short video of him. I'll try and translate.
Und ich kenne also die Stadt. Ich bin mein ganzes Leben lang, ich bin jetzt 100 Jahre alt.
I know this town. I've lived here for 100 years, my whole life.
Meiner Stadt treu geblieben. Woanders war ich nur während des Krieges. Da musste ich hin.
I was only somewhere else during the war.
Ich kenne also die Stadt. Ich bin meiner Stadt treu geblieben. Das war ich nur während des Krieges. Da musste ich hin. Ja. Nun, das Haus von Levi, von dem Textilgeschäft Levi. Ich erinnere mich genau an das Haus in der Grünen Straße. Nein, ja, in der Grünen Straße.
Grün und große Straße.
Ecke große Straße, Grünstraße.
Ja.
Meine Mutter erzählte.
Oh, sorry. I remember the family of the Levies. My mother had explained to me that she used to go in the shop, and Mr. Levy would always, if someone didn't buy something, he would always give them a gift to leave with, even if they didn't buy something. That was a nice, sweet memory that he had. Also, he had vivid memories, which I won't share the video of, but of the day of Kristallnacht and of the destruction of the Jewish properties, including this building, and of the Jewish cemetery in the town. So it's extraordinary to meet him, someone that was a witness and remembered firsthand, remembered the family. Following the laying of the Stolpersteine for the Levy family at Strasbourg, I presented the mayor, Elke Stadler, with a plaque to honor, also to be placed on the facade of the former textile shop and home. And there's the plaque. And 6 months later, in September, they fulfilled my wish in cooperation with the present-day owners of the building. They placed this plaque on the facade. Now as passers-by go by, they can see this plaque, and they may learn more about the personal and human story with which they may relate. While it's not possible to repair what's been destroyed, this visualization is kind of present cultural repair and restoration. It's a reclaiming of our family history, and of this building, where we can attempt to restore the dignity of our ancestors who lived there. And I've made a video. I've made a series of videos, which I'll share with you right now, if I can. Unfortunately, this video doesn't appear to be working, which is a pity. That's a real pity. Well, I will share the link in the chat. So to experience their story, I've recreated an animated tour that reimagines and visually explores the house and their store that was confiscated in 1939 by the Gestapo, and it was demolished in 1940. So I've actually recreated their house based on drawings that I discovered. I'm going to try one more time to get it to play. No, it's not playing, unfortunately. I'm so sorry. Before my grandmother fled to England, she was an apprentice dress designer for the Jewish fashion company Lewinsky Meyer in Berlin. And these are a couple of her drawings that she was able to bring to England with her. And so next we went to Berlin. We went to the town where my grandmother was born and lived in before she fled to England. We laid Stolpersteine at the Jewish hospital, a place that is marked by both the tragedy and the survival of our family. This is where our grandmother Ruth had spent her last few years in Berlin as a teenager. Following the death of her mother, Frida, in 1932, she and her father lived here. This was where he worked as a caretaker and where he blew the shofar in the synagogue. This was where he lived with his second wife, Friederike Franziska, who he married in 1935. This was their home with our grandmother Ruth, and before they fled. It was from this place that David Schumacher was arrested in the middle of the night on over 86 years ago, on October 28th, 1938, with many thousands, a few thousand Polish Jews were deported to Poland. 6 months later, our grandmother Ruth fled to England, and with the help of the Kindertransport. And later that year, Friederike Franziska, or Franze, as she was known, fled to Poland to be with her husband. And here's a video of the Stolperstein actually being installed in front of the hospital, which was quite a delight to see. This isn't Gunter Demnig. He's so busy at this point and sort of semi-retired. I mean, can you imagine having to place so many of these? It's been delegated to wonderful community groups who volunteer to install them, and we were very fortunate to bear witness to the whole process happening in front of our eyes, which took about a half hour, 45 minutes. Before I sort of complete that, I wanted to share an incredible story that happened, the story of these lost letters. Until the Stolperstein project, our great-grandfather, David Schumacher, had been lost to time. All we knew that was that he had disappeared in 1938 and arrested and taken away, and that my grandmother never saw him again after that. These postcards that you see were sat in Berlin untouched for 6 decades, until Sabina, in the midst of doing our research, she'd contacted all sorts of archives, summoned a box of files to her local library near the Baltic Sea where she lives. And amongst those files were a few postcards, which I'm holding in my hands right now, which my great-grandfather wrote them to his only child, Ruth, in January and February of 1941, from the ghetto in a town previously unknown to us called Schratz. Blotched in ink is his address up here, Schratz, Bürgerstraße in the Warthegau. We have, with these letters, they're undeniable and a heartbreaking proof of unspeakable suffering and tragedy that David and Franziska went through. They also offer a glimpse of hope for their daughter and her future. They knew that she was safe, that she was free, and that they also knew that she was getting married, which is something we didn't know that. We didn't know that she had a future. My great-grandfather wrote, "On your 20th birthday, we congratulate you very warmly and wish you good health and good luck, and that all our wishes come true so that we can experience a lot of joy together. We hope that you are healthy and continue to have your occupation and are satisfied. There is nothing special to report about us. We are healthy and we think of you a lot. Spend this day as pleasantly as possible. We will think of your well-being on your birthday." And we had another postcard. We had 2 cards from Elsa Stargard, one of them says, she informed us that you're engaged. What's this story all about? We can't understand it. That was wonderful to learn that. She knew that. They knew that. In 1958, my grandmother fought the post-war West German government for 2 years for damages for the death of her parents. She sent these postcards back to Berlin as proof that her parents had lived in the Scheratz ghetto before they were murdered. These postcards, laid along with the rest of her application, preserved among old files in the Berlin State Office for the last 63 years. And as I said today, thanks to Sabina, I have them in my hand, letters that have been now held by 4 generations that are in pretty good shape, perfectly preserved. And it's such a beautiful note that Sabina wrote to me that I wanted to share with you. She said, now these 3 postcards reach you, dear Ben, and your family. They are a very special remembrance of David and Francisca, but also of your grandmother, Ruth. Here's a photo of our grandmother in the middle, Ruth, with her stepmother, Francisca, and her father, David. David and Francisca continued to live in the ghetto, possibly until 1943, after which there is no trace of them. While there are no records, it's presumed that they were sent to the Chelmno extermination camp. Chelmno was where Nazis pioneered extermination techniques and on the industrial scale. And on the same day that I received these letters, my brother, by chance, not knowing that we didn't know that they had been sent to Chelmno, Brian was visiting the Chelmno, where he said a prayer for them. And here the Stolpersteine. My grandmother is in the middle. It says fled to England 1939, and then on the left is Friederike Franziska Schumacher. And it says that she fled to Poland in 1939 and that she was deported in 1943 to Chelmno. And on the right, David Schumacher, that he was deported in the Poland action of 1938, and then in 1943 was deported to Chelmno. This is a picture of my brother and my mother. Again, that's not me, that's Brian. Here's my brother and my mother in the synagogue inside the Jewish hospital where our great-grandfather would have blown the shofar. Something extraordinary happened in the midst of, doing all of this archival research, which was with the help of Sabina, and also at my own initiative sometimes, not wanting to bother Sabina all the time. I wrote to I thought, well, if Helena had died in 1940, she must be buried somewhere. And I wrote to the Jewish cemetery of Weissensee, which is the largest cemetery in Berlin, largest in Europe, in fact. And I wrote, do you have a record of Sabina Levy? Not the Sabina Levy, of Helena Levy. And they sent me this document back, which is the burial register for her, which is an extraordinary document. And at the bottom, it says something very interesting. It says, the office of the Old People's Home has given 5,000 marks from the proceeds of the confiscated property of the Levies in Strasbourg. There's like in ink right there describing what had happened. That was quite extraordinary. I had over a year ago, during the course of research about our great-grandfather David and his wife Francisca, I came to learn this name, which I didn't know before, Helena Levy, which was our grandmother's grandmother. She died in 1940, and she was buried in Weissensee, but I learned she had been buried without a headstone, obviously, in the midst of war. It wasn't possible. And often I thought about Albert, her husband of over 50 years, standing right there where we stood, with her son, perhaps with his son George, in the dark of the depths of 1940, and with their family dislocated, their home belongings taken from them, and faced with unknown of what might happen next. I wanted to take an opportunity to honor her like we had done with the Stolpersteine and her legacy and in some way, and I realized that she should get a headstone after 84 years without one. And so we put a headstone for her. And again, it's one of those videos. Oh, I hope that I can show this to you. Yes, good. So since returning from my trip, I realized that while the Stolpersteine are an important step, very important step in recognition, it's also important that their stories given context. For us going there, it was apparent that for many people, the Stolpersteine, while they're significant in naming people, for us descendants to be there, we have these faces, we're real human people. And by placing the gesture of placing the photographs, that we were able to do that of our family members next to the Stolpersteine, we're humanizing these stories, which is so important. And so I wanted to lend a hand where I can to the places like Zelo and Strasbourg to tell our own story. And I've created these animated videos. I'm going to try and show the other one because it's really special. I wanted to talk about the history, the story of also of the family, but also of the confiscation of their property, and as a way of culturally repairing that, and artistically. As an artist, I have a lot of sort of agency and power for that. So I created these videos.
Ich bin Ben Max Wood, der Urgroßenkel von Max und Adelheid Philippsborn und der Enkel von Heinz Philippsborn. Wenn Sie heute an der Berliner Straße 46 stehen, sehen Sie nur ein leeres Grundstück. Doch unter Ihren Füßen erinnern Stolpersteine an die früheren Bewohner, Max und Adelheid Philippsborn. Hier befanden sich ihr Zuhause und Geschäft, einer 425 Quadratmeter großes Anwesen mit Wohnhaus und Hinterhof. Max und Adelheid führten hier ein Leben, das von Familie und Arbeit geprägt war. Max, eine Feldwelpe im Ersten Weltkrieg, heiratete Adelheid 1914, die das Haus 1923 erbte. Ihr Sohn Heinz wurde 1920.
I'm going to stop that there, and I'm going to see if I can actually show the other video because I'd like to share both of them. You also will have the opportunity, of course, to look at them on my website. No, it's not really a limb. No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not allowing me to with that one. So I'll make sure that you get that link. And
Ben, when you pulled up that YouTube into the window, we were actually able to see the video from that other window.
okay, I could try that again if you want, if that's okay.
Yeah, just pull it as high as you can.
Okay, let me try and go back. Apologies for this, people.
Ich bin Ben Wood, der Urgroßenkel von Albert und Helene Levy und der Enkel von Ruth Phillips, geborene Schumacher. Sie stehen in diesem Moment vor dem Gebäude in der Großen Straße 73. Nichts lässt darauf schließen, dass an dieser Stelle ein anderes Wohn- und Geschäftshaus stand, das bis 1939 der jüdischen Familie Levi gehörte und von den Nazis beschlagnahmt und abgerissen wurde. Hier befanden sich das Zuhause und das Textilgeschäft von Albert und Helena Levi und ihrer Familie. Zu dem Anwesen zählte ein 300 Quadratmeter großes Gebäude mit einem Textilgeschäft, einem Wohnhaus und einem Hinterhof. Seit 1886 lebten und arbeiteten.
Going to stop it there. So you get the sense of it. I think that gives you a sense of it. And I'm going to conclude. So I can go to questions or comments. So since returning, since returning, I realized that while the Stolpersteine are an important step, it's also important that their story is given context. And I've created, as I said, these animated videos. I want to end by saying that as much as this was a challenging story to explore, it's been a very healing one, working with such incredible angels, as I call them, angels, as Sabina, Franke, Michael Schimmel, Anke, and many other people, the people in Zelo and Stolzberg. My faith in humanity has been very buoyed by them. Our grandparents rebuilt their life and their family. Today, we're a family of over 60 people, descendants that live in England, Israel, Germany, United States, Canada. And we're a legacy that at that time of uncertainty, they couldn't imagine, nor could they imagine that I'd be with you here today, giving this presentation in this unique way. So I wanted to just finally end with the words of Uwe. Uwe is someone that knew my grandparents since the 1980s, and we still know him. And here he is in Berlin, saying some sweet words about my grandmother.
She was just amazing. And what I actually took away from that meeting and the other meetings we had over the next years was something what I have learned from Ruth. That's love. And to open to other people, no matter what happened. She really had a love for Berlin. She loved me. And that was something I felt very moved. And that stayed with me. So that's the story of Ruth. Certainly that small.
So Uwe had been connected with our family for many years. He's an oral historian and had written many books about Berlin fashion. So I'm going to finish there. I have many references for you to refer to, and I think that Howard's going to send them to you. Things that I've gone over here, and that's it. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Ben. This has been just wonderful, having you share the incredible work that you've been doing. And I also want to extend my thanks to those who are on the call, especially from Germany, Sabina and others, and my thanks and gratitude. We do have some questions, and please, if you do have questions, put them in the chat and I'll relay them to Ben. And as he mentioned, I will send tomorrow an email message to all of you that has all of those references that he has at the end with links that you can explore further, as well as some of the resources we have at the Jewish Community Library that can help you go further in your learning about this. So one question from Judith Berlowitz was your this idea of cultural repair, if that came organically from you, or are you, if you can talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Judith. Thank you for the question. I've done some work in San Francisco over the years with Native Americans, with Ohlone, and I see this as a an approach that they take and they're taking to where it may be not possible legally to change things, like for example with repairing, we might be technically past like deadlines for monetary compensation or getting, let's say, that building back, which would be very complicated probably. This is my kind of creative way to reclaim that for myself, and also to share with the local people in Stolpersteine and in Zelo the stories which they may not know about otherwise, And I've heard through Nils, through someone in Stolpersteine, that people are already engaging with that screen, that shield, what do you call it, the sign, and that's great to hear.
Great, thanks. So Ernie Newbrin wrote that he noted that the stones themselves, the Stolpersteine, do not indicate that the person was Jewish. Is this something? Can you remark on this at all?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what he's saying, but I'm seeing that Anka, who is someone that I've been working with, has sort of responded to this. She says that the stones, they're also for they're to commemorate the last voluntary residence of people that were persecuted by the Nazis, and also opponents of the Nazi regime, not only Jews but also Sinti and Roma people, politically persecuted people, gay people, Jehovah's Witnesses, and victims of euthanasia. It was interesting in the case of Helena, for example, that we had found her on the list of victims of euthanasia. Although we don't think that she was a victim of euthanasia. She had been in a hospital where that had been conducted. So there was a question whether she could have been a victim of that. It doesn't necessarily have any, I don't think it necessarily indicates that you were Jewish. It's very basic. I think they try and state the facts as much as possible, where the person lived or when they were deported, where they died. That's it.
Thank you. So Avi asks whether you have shared the videos in Germany, and if so, what is the response?
Have I showed the videos in Germany? The one in Strasbourg, yes, definitely. It's the plaque. Actually, I should have explained that. I'm sorry. There's a QR code. I don't know if people know everyone knows what a QR code is. QR code is when you take your phone and you point it at it's a code. It brings up a digital a website, and basically the idea of that plaque is that it brings up that video that I've showed you. And so anybody in the street that goes there and is interested in that plaque will, in fact, be able to see the video. In the case of Zelo, that's a video I've only just recently finished, and I recently shared it with the town, with the mayor. I would like to show it in the town museum. There's a train museum. There's a museum which was the Bahnhof. It's a station where Jews were deported from. I would like to show it there if possible. I think that will be possible. It just sometimes takes time.
Thanks. He has a follow-up question as to whether you've spoken to school children in the United States.
No, I've not. This is really the first opportunity that I'm having to share with anybody anything about this project. I wrote an email last year after the project looking for a venue, and Howard wrote me and said, I would be delighted to have you. So this is the first chance I'm having to speak about this.
Well, I have no regrets. So and so we got a question from Isaac about those videos, how you went about recreating those pre-war buildings or the pre-war environment in those towns.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly left room for sort of interpretation, imagination. I started, as always, from the document, so I was lucky enough in both those cases to find in the archive, I think it was the Brandenburg Landeshauptarchive, a document which were plans of the buildings, very sort of plans in some form, and photographs were very hard to find, but plans were easier. So based on the plans in SketchUp, with the help of someone else actually, because I'm not that conversant with SketchUp, was able to reconstruct the buildings. And there's some sort of creative liberty and license. I'm not sure that they would have actually looked that nice, but you know, you show anything in SketchUp, it looks sort of brand new. Doesn't look like it was there for years. So that's how I did it. I try as much as possible to be as closely, make it look as it may have looked, but of course, it was also somewhere between a dream and history. It's like it's somewhere between my imagination and maybe how it was. So it's like it's this combination of maybe an apparition and a historic photograph, a video, you know. So I kind of like that it's somewhere between that. It's like it's something that came out of my imagination.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for all you've done. And I just want to give my encouragement to this is a wonderful and very important project to make sure these events are remembered. I want to ask if you want to leave us with anything before we go.
Well, I do notice there's a couple. I know we don't have much time, but there's a few people on this call that I just want to acknowledge. First of all, I see in the chat, I don't see everyone's face. Maybe I should. Maybe is there a way that I could see everyone's face?
Not everybody shows their face.
Oh, I'm just going to go through. So I see. I'm just going to go through as I see them. I say Sarah Weinreich. Sarah showed up to all of our events in Berlin and was a great supporter and interested in our family story. And Arthur Oppenheimer, so great to see you, and Charles and Liz, and my wife Rachel is right there, and Guaya, and Michael Schimmel and is on the call, and Michael is the town historian who has worked so many years with our family, with Achim Reisner, to record the family story. And I have to say, you know, without Achim's recording that we have, and then also Michael's capturing of some of these stories, I wouldn't know anything, because Michael has it on his website, and he's been such a great advocate for our family to share these stories. And he responds always to my emails, all my weird questions. I also see Tony Reisner. Tony is the son of Achim, and it's so special to have him here. And also Hannah Miley. Hannah is extraordinary herself. I've gotten to know Hannah through this project. Hannah lives in Arizona. She came to England in 1939 with the Kindertransport when she was 7 or 8 years old. And she's written an extraordinary book called A Garland of Ashes, and she's making a film about her journey right now. And sorry, I'm going to go through because this is very important. My brother is there, Daniel. I see Sharon from Israel. Sharon, who is my incredibly through the internet, we reconnected with family that had fled to Israel before the beginning of the founding of Israel. And she's here. And she's also great-granddaughter of Max. And so many people that I can't even, Michael, my mother. Anyway, I'm just delighted that you're all there and here. And of course, Sabina, who we wouldn't be anywhere without this. So without her. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And we really deeply appreciate it. And I wish all of you well. And thanks so much, Ben. And be well.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.